Hey guys, welcome to another episode with me Shashank Udupa, and today we have a beautifully value-packed video today, right? And it's going to be on the commodities market or the commodity stocks. So you know that commodity stocks have been in the news recently, right? Mostly what has been happening is a lot of people are saying that we're going to see a commodity bull run very soon. So we decided that let's do a value-packed episode on commodities, and today we're going to look at all the companies that deal in commodities, okay, mainly in the mid-cap and the large-cap sector. That means any company that has a market cap more than 5,000 crores, okay, who's dealing with commodities, we're going to target today, okay. Apart from that, what we're first going to look at in the next segment is what are the characteristics of a commodity company, okay, because commodity companies are slightly different from normal companies. So let's look at that first. Next, what I'll do is we'll go deep dive into each commodity. Okay, we have a lot of commodities to cover. We will deep dive into each commodity and we will look at what company is dealing in that commodity sector as well. Okay, so get ready. This is going to be a crazy value packed episode. So let's look at this in the next segment, commodity company characteristics. So in this segment, let's look at how the companies in the commodity sector look like. Okay, they have a few characteristics which are quite unique to commodity players itself. Now, the performance of commodity companies are dependent on the price, okay, for the respective commodity. So for example, if there is some company dealing with steel, then the company's performance is going to be dependent on the price of steel in the market, right? So their entire company's revenues and performance is going to depend on what the commodity is doing and what the price of the commodity is, right? Unlike other firms, okay, unlike other businesses, commodity companies for most of the times are price takers. Okay, now what is price takers? Price takers means जो भी market में चल रहा है, whatever is in the market, whatever the rate of the commodity is in the market, they have to start selling it in that price itself. There is no way where they can be like, market पे there's some rate going on, I want to charge more. That's usually not possible. So for most times they're price takers. Whatever is the current market price, they have to start selling it at that price itself. Okay, for example, like even the largest oil companies in the world, the biggest oil companies in the world have to sell their output at whatever the market price is. No one will pay more than that. Okay, now not surprising because of this, okay, because of this, the revenue of the commodity companies are heavily dependent on the commodity price itself, okay, which can work both ways. Okay, so that is why commodity companies are slightly volatile. Okay, and it can work both ways, because if the price of the commodity is going up, okay, then you know for a fact that if it's going to go up, that means the sales automatically will look better because now they're selling the same commodity at a higher price. So you can predict in a way, you can connect the dots and predict in a way that this time the result might be beneficial. Okay, or if the price suddenly drops and shoots down, then you know for a fact the price might not be that beneficial. Okay, so let's look at it from a different perspective. The profits of the commodity company tend to be volatile. Okay, volatile means fluctuating. Sometimes it'll be high, sometimes it'll be low. Again, why is that? Because for two reasons, right? One, they're entirely dependent on the commodity cost. If the commodity cost is high, their profits will be better. If the commodity cost is low, their profits will be low. But don't forget, they're still a business. Right? When there's still a business, there is a certain element of fixed cost that is there irrespective. You still have to have your office, you still have to have your manufacturing, you still have to have your employees that you're paying for. Whether the price of the commodity is up or down, that is still fixed. Okay, and commodity companies usually tend to have a higher fixed cost. Okay, usually tend to have a higher fixed cost. Hence, any fluctuation in the price of the commodity will directly impact the company's revenues. Okay, so this is something that is very important for the commodity companies, and it's important for us to understand how to understand a commodity company. Now, even the healthiest companies, okay, the large cap companies, the big companies, even the best of the best companies are currently at risk or might be at risk if there is any negative sentiment in the global scenario. Okay, for example, globally, okay, if the oil prices drop, and we have seen this news, right? Oil barrels, the price of an oil barrel suddenly drops. What happens is all the companies, the biggest companies or the biggest companies, they can't sell more. Right? They can't sell at a higher rate. Either they have to increase the quantity that they sell, but they can't sell it at a higher rate. Now, what happens here is even the biggest companies are at risk when the macroeconomic scene looks bad for a particular commodity. Okay, so in such a scenario, an extended economic downturn or a lengthy phase of low commodity prices can put these companies at a very big risk. Assume that one commodity ka price does not go up at all. It's constantly down, and it's been down from 9 months, right? धंधा कैसा चलेगा? How will it actually work? So these are the risks that a commodity company faces, and it's not in their hands. Okay, they can create all the other stuff, but they are completely bound on the commodities price that is currently in the market. Okay. Now, another important resource to find out or understand is that the commodities, okay, are a finite resource. They're not infinite. Okay, there's a finite quantity of natural resources on the planet. So if oil prices increase, okay, if the oil prices increase, we can only explore for more oil. Okay, but we cannot create oil. We have to go find oil. So if you want more some kind of coal or something like that, you have to go find them. You have to go start mining them. Okay, you can't just be like, chalo abhi I'll just make something new and we'll create oil from scratch. So that is not something that can be created, so you can't keep increasing the capacity so much. It is something that has to be taken from the planet itself. Okay, this is also the primary reasons why commodity prices can be very volatile. Okay, sometimes what happens, you'll see that most of the commodities, okay, work on something called as demand and supply. Okay, suddenly sometimes when the supply is too much in the market, okay, the prices usually tend to go down because too much supply in the market, demand is the same. Okay, so sometimes what these oil companies do, they purposely limit the supply. You know, all these people will be like, I'm not selling too much now, okay, which will artificially boost up the demand. So it all depends on demand supply. Too much of something will push the price down. Okay, so this is something that is very important. These are the few characteristics of a commodity company. Now let's get into the next segment where I talk about each commodity and we will see each stock in that commodity. Okay, so let's look at that in the next segment. We will tackle the first segment that, or the first commodity that we will tackle is steel. Okay, we've all heard of steel, but let's look at how this commodity plays in the global market. Okay, now steel is very important as a commodity because of its high tensile strength and its low cost, and steel is usually used in a lot of buildings, constructions, tools, infrastructure, ships, trains, cars, machine, electric appliances, and weapons as well. So steel is obviously, we know for a fact, is used in a lot of things, right? But now steel makers live in a very cyclical industry. Now what is a cyclical industry? A cyclical industry is such an industry, okay, that is sensitive to the business cycle, such as the revenues generally are higher in periods of economic prosperity and expansion and lower in periods of economic downturn and contraction. So when the economy is booming, okay, for example, if you've seen in US, right, they're spending a lot of money on construction. That means the demand for steel might go up. Okay, that is how you start connecting everything, right? So whenever there's prosperity and growth in a country, steel usually tends to go up. But whenever they're not optimizing for growth, steel usually goes down. So that's like a cyclical industry. Okay. But when the demand is very high in the steel industry, steel makers often expand capacity and overstretch themselves. Matlab, they produce a little bit too much, okay? And when the demand plummets, which means when the demand goes down, most of them incur significant losses because they have so much investment that they put in the steel, and now they're sitting with so much steel. Now obviously when the supply is more, the price will go down. Now when they start selling that steel back into the market, it will be at a lower rate. Okay, this is usually caused sometimes, right? Whenever there's a booming industry, all of these guys will be like, demand acha aa raha hai, let's keep producing more steel, and then suddenly it might drop down. So it is a very risky business that way. Because one good factor here is that because steel is used in infrastructure, okay, and automotive industry, okay, domestic appliances, this is why it is slightly stable, okay, because demand tends to pick up when the economy is on a rise. Okay, so whenever the economy is going up, we will see that good demand is coming from this particular sector as well. Okay, when a lot of consumption is happening. Now what happens in steel? Okay, there are two main raw materials that go into steel. So it is, I know I'm going slightly into depth, but it is important for you also to understand ki commodity kaisa chalta hai, how does this commodity work, and when we understand how this commodity work, we will understand how the companies of this commodity work, and then you can connect the dots and take advantage of this. Okay, so let's look at the two raw materials that go into making steel. Okay, the two raw materials are coking coke and iron ore. Okay, now on the coking coal front, India entirely depends on imports. They actually import this coking coal. Okay, India imports most of this from Australia, and it has been doing this from a long period of time. Okay, so any sharp increase in the price of coking coal, okay, from Australia can actually lead to problems, as steel makers now have to increase the steel prices because of the competition. Okay, because of all that. Okay. Now, India is self-sufficient in iron ore and even exports it to other countries. So the second raw material, which is iron ore, we are okay. Okay, because we export it. However, iron ore prices can also be extremely volatile. Big players in the industry like JSW Steel, Tata Steel, and SAIL have their own iron ore mines so that they can optimize very well for their own prices. Okay, now another very big significant factor for steel, okay, in the steel industry is China. And you might have heard this in the news in the past, right? China is the largest manufacturer of steel. Okay, they produce around 1 billion tons of steel, accounting to over 50% of the world supply. It's massive. Okay, now to put that into perspective, India is the second largest producer, and we only muster around 111 million tons. They're at 1 billion, and we are almost a tenth of that, right? A fraction of China's output as we look at it. Now, why is this important? The global price of steel is completely dependent on the global demand for steel as well as the supply of steel. Okay, if demand is high and China is able to supply this demand, okay, but at very low prices, because China has economies of scale, they supply steel at very low prices. India has to also protect its domestic steel producers. For example, if there is a construction site happening in India, if I'm getting the same steel from China, why would I take it from India? Because China is giving it at a very low cost. Okay, so what India did recently, which was there in a few months ago, India came and introduced something known as duties. Okay, they introduced duties in the country, where anyone who's selling steel or wants to import steel has to pay extra taxes on this. I think this was called anti-dumping policy. Okay, where they introduced more. So this helped the local players who are producing steel to actually be cheaper than the China production, right? China quantity. Now, India might be the second largest steel producer in the world, but the per capita consumption of steel at 74 kg is one of the lowest in the world. Okay, we produce second largest, but we don't use it in India a lot. China's per capita steel consumption is at 590 kgs, almost 7 times or more than 8 times actually of what India is. So they consume a lot of steel as well. We do not consume. So that is why there is so much demand in India, and hence the potential for growth of domestic steel companies is there. But we have to be careful of China because they keep coming and dumping all this thing in India. So that is why we introduced a new law which puts more duty and taxes on them. Okay. Now, the final thing, India's finished steel consumption grew at around 5.2% CAGR, okay, which is compounded annual growth rate during FY16 to FY20, okay, to reach around 100 million tons, which is good. India's crude steel and finished steel production increased to 108.5 million tons and 1.3 million tons in FY20. Between April 20 and November 20, India's cumulative production of crude steel was 62 million tons and finished steel was around 55.68 million tons, okay. Export and import were also good at 8.2 million tons of export and 6.69 million tons of import. That means we're exporting a lot. Okay. Now here is a chart where we will show you the last 5 years chart of how the steel prices look like. And you can see that steel prices currently are almost at an all-time high. Okay. Because of extensive demand from the auto industry and the construction sectors. Apart from this, another advantage here is most of the units have been shut down in China, obviously because of what is happening, to control the amount of carbon emission that is happening in China as well. And because of the anti-dumping policies, we look more attractive right now. Okay, so steel prices are at all-time high. Demand is also super high. Now, let's look at the top 3 players in this industry, right? The top 3 players are one, JSW Steel, okay, Tata Steel, and we have SAIL, which is Steel Authority of India Limited. Now, I'll just briefly run you through them. Okay, if you look at JSW Steel, it's at around it's almost at 1.29 lakh market crore, which is biggest. Okay, next comes in Tata Steel, which is also around 1 lakh market cap, and SAIL is slightly smaller, which is at 37,000 market cap. Okay, which is 3 times lower than the next biggest player. Okay, if you look at the PE ratio, which is price to earnings ratio, both JSW and Tata Steel are currently at 50-ish PE, whereas SAIL is at 10 PE, which is 4 times lesser than the PE, maybe because of multiple reasons, we don't know that. Okay, if you look at the debt to equity ratio, it's quite standard across all, it's around 1.3, 1.7, 1.17, because they are, as we mentioned, is a high cost, fixed cost business, and you need to invest a lot in infrastructure, so you need loans for that. Okay, if you look at the operating margin, JSW at 20% operating profit margin. Okay, JSW 20%, which is good. Tata Steel little lower at 15, and SAIL is at 21, which is better than JSW. Okay, and if you look at the last 1 year return, all of them have given around 200% minimum return. All 3 of them. So these are the 3 major players. If you want to watch, if you want to go look at them, these are the 3 major players in the steel segment. Okay, next we will move on to another segment or another commodity called the iron segment. Okay, so remember we spoke about iron ore as a very important thing in the steel industry as well. So in India, in iron ore segment, India is self-sufficient and exports most of the iron ore abroad. So we are very self-reliant on when it comes to iron ore. Okay, India's leading state that produces iron ore are in Odisha. Okay, it accounts for more than 55% of the total production of India, followed by Chhattisgarh, which is around 17%, and then Karnataka and Jharkhand at 14 and 11% respectively. Okay, if you look at this chart on the right, there's a chart on the crude ore and the iron content as well, which shows you how much reserves are there in million metric tons. Okay, and if you look at India, we're currently at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6th or 7th position, approximately at 7th position right now. Iron content is the amount of iron in a crude ore. Okay, now we're talking about crude ore. The higher, the better. Okay, so more iron content in the iron in the crude ore is obviously better. India exported about 37 million tons of iron ore in FY20. Okay, 30 of which was exported to China. Okay, so China is now importing a lot of iron ore. By FY20, the amount of iron ore stock in Indian mines amounted to 162 million tons. Okay, now I will show you a chart of how the global iron ore prices also look in the last 5 to 10 years. Okay, this is last 5 years chart. Okay, let's look at this. Look at how the dollar rate for per dry metric ton has gone up from 49 in 2016 to almost 170 in now 2021, right? So iron also, let's look at where it's used. Okay, we know where steel was used, but iron has a lot of applications in the industry. Primarily use of the iron ore, around 98%, is to make steel. Okay, the main use of iron is to make steel. Okay, as I pointed out in the earlier segment, the steel prices were at an all-time high due to the rise in demand. So if steel prices are going to be there, obviously iron ore prices are going to be in demand. Since iron ore is such a key ingredient for steel, and as covered earlier in steel's demand doesn't look like it's going away any soon, the demand for iron ore is also long-term and expected to be fairly stable. Okay, because we're all in this growth phase of construction. Okay. Now, let's look at the iron ore companies that are there in this market. Okay, there are two companies that I will talk about. One is NMDC and one is Vedanta. Okay, first, Vedanta is the highest, and I'm pretty sure you might have all heard of Vedanta. Vedanta is currently at 85,000, almost 86,000 market cap as of when we're doing this video, and NMDC is almost half of that at 40,000 market cap. Vedanta has a better ROE of 21, whereas NMDC has an ROE of only 13%. Okay, and the 1 year return for both, Vedanta has around 200% return, whereas NMDC has 82%. So it's good to find out what is good in these two segments. Okay. Now, next, we will talk about another commodity, which is a very important commodity that all of us keep looking at, which is oil and gas. Okay, guys. So this is a very important commodity. So pay attention to this, right? Now, before we start and look at why oil and gas is so important, we need to understand why is this extremely important for the world, right? Oil and gas is like the lifeblood of industrialized nations. Okay, oil has become obviously one of the most important resource over time. Since the mid 1950s, everyone's been running for oil. Okay, tel ka kuwa types. Now, its products are mainly underpin the modern society, mainly supplying energy to power industry, heat homes, provide fuel for vehicles, airplanes, carry goods. It basically is a very key component when the country has to grow, right? So that is why it is one of the most important commodity, and also it is very less in supply as well. The oil and gas industry is one of the largest sectors in the world with respect to dollar value, generating around 3.3 trillion in revenue annually. So oil and gas, as I mentioned, is one of the biggest commodity players right now. Okay. Now, oil and gas industry is broken down into three segments. Okay. This is like nice value bombs. Okay. Three segments. First one is upstream, midstream, and downstream. Now, what is an upstream business? Okay. Upstream business consists of companies involved in exploration and production of oil and gas. Matlab, they'll find it and they'll start producing it. These are the firms that search the world for reservoirs of the raw materials and then drill that to extract the material. These companies are often known as E&P. E&P matlab exploration and production. Okay, the upstream segment is characterized by high risk, high investment capital, but extended duration as it takes time to locate them, then go drill them, set up the infrastructure, and the technology has to be so good as well. Okay, but then obviously if they find it and they start producing it, lot of revenue over time. Now, midstream businesses are those that are focused only on transportation. Okay, they are the ones responsible for moving the extracted raw materials to refineries to process this oil and gas. So first they find it in this, E&P people find it, they drill it, and then there's a transportation midstream companies that take it and then, go into that refinery to make it actually a better product, right? Midstream companies are characterized by shipping, trucking, pipelines, and storage of raw materials. Okay, the midstream segment is also marked by high regulation. Okay, regulation, particularly on pipeline transmission and low capital risk. The segment is also naturally dependent on the success of upstream firms, obviously, right? If the upstream firm doesn't do well, the midstream will take a big hit. Now the last one is downstream businesses. Okay, downstream businesses are basically refineries. These are the companies responsible for removing the impurities and converting the oil and gas to products for general public, such as jet fuel, heating oil, gasoline, asphalt, etc. Now, this is why it is so important. These are the three categories. Essentially, a rise in oil prices work best for upstream companies and works against oil downstream companies and vice versa. Okay, so when the price of oil goes up, obviously I can sell it at a better rate, but then it works against the people who are at downstream because they have to take that oil at a very expensive rate, make it look beautiful and nice, and remove all the impurities, and then pass it on to the general public, and they have to negotiate there. Okay. Largest contributors to the non-OECD petroleum consumption growth. We consume a lot, okay, by the way. Growth oil import, okay, rose sharply to around 101 billion in 2019 to 2020 from 70 billion in 2016 to 17. So it's gone up by 30 billion. India has retained its spot as the third largest consumer of oil in the world, okay, with consumption of around 5.16 million barrels per day, which is massive to put it into perspective. Okay, India's oil refining capacity stood at 250 million metric tons, making it the second largest refiner in Asia. In that, private companies own 35% of the total refining capacity in FY20. Then we have something known as natural gas consumption. Okay, natural gas consumption forecast is to reach around 143 million tons by 2040. India's LNG, okay, import stood at around 33 billion cubic meters during FY20. Massive numbers. Okay. Crude oil consumption is expected to grow at a compounded annual growth rate (CAGR) of around 3.6% to 500 million tons by 2040, and from 221 million tons in 2017. Okay, it's going to double. The consumption is going to double, is what people are predicting. Natural gas consumption is forecasted to increase at 4.18% CAGR to 143 million tons by 2020 from 58 million tons in 2018. 3 times natural gas is expected to go up. In essence, India imports about 83% of its annual oil requirement. Sad, right? 83% is annual oil requirement India imports. However, there is another angle at play. Okay, the government tends to regulate oil prices a lot in India. Low oil prices and high oil prices don't translate into low and high petrol prices in India, sadly. And we have seen this, right? This is because government tends to tax the oil when the global oil prices are low and subsidize oil when the global oil prices are high. Okay, this is why rise and fall in oil prices does not affect us at all in India. Okay, and that does not translate to any higher or lower margins for upstream companies or downstream companies, because India they adjust the tax according to that. Now, in the coronavirus time, oil prices took a big hit. They became negative for a while because of extremely low demand due to global lockdown. Lockdown hai, to who will consume the oil? There was no consumption at all. So the oil prices took a big hit at that point. However, they stabilized again, okay, with Brent crude oil trading close to $60 per barrel. Okay, that is how they calculate how the oil prices are in that. Now, let me show you a chart here which shows the 5-year history of Brent crude oil chart in US dollars per barrel. And if you look at it in the coronavirus time in March 2020, see how it dropped from almost $70 to almost $10, right? It dropped significantly, which is massive. Okay. Now I will show you another chart, okay, which shows the natural gas price, okay, natural gas price in dollars per million British thermal units. Again, if you see that in coronavirus time, it fell down a lot, but now it is currently trading at around 2.75 to 3. Okay, now let's look at some oil and gas companies in India, and here you will know some famous names. Okay, we have Reliance Industries, obviously, as one of the biggest. Okay, we have ONGC, Oil India, BPCL, IOCL, and HPCL, all good companies, right? Now, out of this, I'll look at the bad factors, right? Out of this, Oil India's PE ratio is at 4, IOCL is at 5, and HPCL is only at 3.99, whereas everyone else is trading at a higher PE. Okay. If you look at their debt to equity ratio, it looks like BPCL is slightly over leveraged than all the other players. If you look at the last 1 year performance, Reliance has given good performance, Oil India and ONGC has given good performance as well. Okay. And if you look at the operating margins, again, Reliance is doing really well and ONGC is doing really well from the entire competition. Okay. So this is how we track that. Awesome. So this is how the oil and gas commodity segment caters to. Okay. In the next segment, we look at how coal as a commodity comes into the picture. So let's look at that in the next segment, which is coal. Now, coal is extremely important because it has the following applications. Okay. Electricity generation, metal production like steel, cement production, gasification and liquefaction. Okay. And other major uses of coal include the paper, textile, and glass industry. Now, industries in India consumed around 968 million tons of raw coal in 2018-19, growing at around 7.76% over the previous fiscal year, which is good, right? The largest consumers of coal in India are electricity generation companies, then the steel industry, then the sponge iron industry, and then the cement industry at the end, okay? Now, due to high demand, okay, there's one problem here. There is high demand in India, but the average quality of coal in India is very poor. Okay, and because of that, India is actually forced to import high quality coal to meet the requirements of steel plants. Again, everything's coming back to steel, right? India coal imports have risen from 73 million tons, okay, 73 million metric tons in 2009-10 to around 235 million tons, and this is almost gone up 3 to 4 times in the last 10 years that we have been importing high quality coal, and India is not able to give high quality coal. Okay. Previously, Coal India had a monopoly in this sector, but lately the government has allowed private companies to enter this sector. However, this isn't bad for Coal India. That's because Coal India supplies more than 80% of the fuel to Indian power plants and has been falling short of targets, not doing a good job. The nation imports this to meet the shortfall of demand, and obviously you have to pay higher charges to import this, and apparently this is expected to grow by 5%. Now, what the advantage here is that more private players can come inside India and meet this demand of India that the current Coal India is not able to do. Okay, so there's an opportunity here. As stated earlier, thermal power plants and steel are the main drivers of coal in India. Okay, coal-fired power generation is expected to grow by around 4% during 17-18, suggests the Central Electricity Authority in its latest estimates. Okay. Now let's look at the global coal prices in the last 5 years in dollars per ton. See how it's fluctuating, right? In 2019, it was at 110, fell down obviously during the pandemic time to around 50. Now it is back around 87. And obviously the monopoly player here, the only player listed here in this place is called Coal India. Okay, now private players are coming in, but currently it's only Coal India at 80,000 market cap, approximately 6.26 price to earnings ratio. Again, I don't have any industry thing to match this. Okay, the operating profit margin is 20%, very low debt equity ratio of 0.13, but 1 year return, even during the pandemic time, last 1 year return is minus 8%. Okay, so it's very important for you guys to look at this and understand. But one good factor here is the ROE, which is around 57%. Okay, so have a look at this, and now you understand how coal again is important for steel as well. Okay, cool. Now in the next segment, let's look at another commodity which is important in India right now, which is the cement industry. Now, cement is mainly used as a binder in concrete, okay, which is the basic material for all types of construction, including your houses, roads, schools, hospitals, dam, ports. Jo bhi chahiye, concrete is important, and cement is the binder for this. Okay. Now, it is also used in some decorative applications such as floors, staircase, driveways, pool decks, and tables, sculptures, books. A lot of applications of cement. Okay. And concrete as well. Now, limestone and coal are the key ingredients used to manufacture cement. Again, see how it's connecting to everything, right? Cement ke liye coal is required. Now, if coal prices go up, maybe cement prices will go up. Think about it from that perspective, okay? Generally, there is very little differentiation that the cement players can offer to increase the price, and hence the companies just try to reduce the cost, okay? Because I can't come and say this is a new variety of cement which is much better than my competition, right? Both come differentiation ho sakta hai, aisa in little technology used there. So companies just try to reduce the cost that they have. India is the second largest producer of cement in the world. India has a lot of potential for development in the infrastructure and the construction sector, and the cement sector is expected to largely benefit from it. Some of the recent initiatives such as development of 98 smart cities are expected to provide a major boost to the cement sector. Now, cement production has reached 329 million tons in FY20 and is projected to reach in the next 2 years 381 million tons, okay, which is very big. As India has a high quantity and quality of limestone and coal deposits throughout the country, the cement industry promises huge potential for growth. The cement production capacity is estimated to touch 550 million tons by 2025. Aided by suitable government foreign policies, several foreign players such as Lafarge Holcim Heidelberg Cement, and Vicat have invested in the country in the recent past. And we have also seen some big players like HNIs like Radhakrishnan Damani investing in cement companies as well. Okay, now let's look at the cement companies here. The largest by far is Ultratech Cement, Shree Cement, Ambuja Cement, ACC, JK Cements, Ramco Cements, and lastly India Cements at a very low market cap. Okay, the highest is Ultratech, which is almost a 2 lakh market cap. Okay, and then it goes accordingly in that order. If you look at the average PE ratio of the industry, apart from Shree Cements, which is very high, it looks like the average is around 25 to 30. Okay, if you look at the ROE, everyone looks at somewhere around 15 to 18% should be the average. Actually, 12% should be the average. From an operating margin perspective, Shree Cement is doing really well. Their PE ratio is also very high. Their ROE is also quite good. And if you look at the debt to equity ratio, all of them are quite low except JK Cements, which is at 1. Okay. Now, if you look at their last 1 year return, the highest return was given by JK Cements of 200%, Ultratech gave 100, Ramco gave 117, and the rest follows in this graph, okay, in this chart. Cool. So this was the cement sector. By the way, cement sector has a lot of potential to grow. It's good for you guys to track the cement sector as well, okay. In the next segment, let's talk about another commodity called aluminium. Now, what are the use cases of aluminium in India? Aluminium is basically widely used in the packaging industry for production of coils, cans, foils, and other wrapping materials, right? Now, it is also a component of mainly commonly used items such as utensils and watches, your aluminium, utensils that you use. In construction industry, aluminium is employed in the manufacture of doors, windows, wires, and roofing, okay? It is also used in the transport industry for production of cycles, spacecraft, car bodies, aircraft, and marine parts. Aluminum also finds its application in the production of paints, reflective surfaces, and a lot of wires. So basically, a lot of use cases that are there for aluminium. Now, aluminium is the second most used metal in the world after steel. Okay, with an annual consumption of approximately 65 million tons, including scrap. Okay, it is also the fastest growing metal, which has grown by nearly 20 times in the last 60 years. Wow, that's crazy. Okay. India is the fourth largest producer of aluminium in the world with a share of around 5.3% of the global aluminium output. Okay. Now, supply of primary aluminium is in excess in India. Okay. As it is one of the largest producers of primary aluminium. Aluminium consumption in India is at 2.7 kg per capita, is much below the global average of 11 kg per capita, which is almost 3 to 4 times lower than the world average. Production of aluminium stood at 3.65 million tons in FY20. Aluminium export from the country reached 1.5 million tons in 19. In value terms, aluminium export from the country stood at around $20 million only. Now, let me show you the 5-year chart of global aluminium prices. Okay, you will see that in 16 how much it was. This is approximately around US dollar per metric ton. It was around 1.49k. Now it's again back up to 2.11k, right? So this is how it is. Hindalco is the world's largest aluminium rolling company and one of Asia's biggest producers of primary aluminium. Okay, we have two companies listed here, which is Hindalco and Vedanta, both at a similar market cap. Hindalco is now obviously Hindalco is trending right now as well. 32 PE पे चल रहा है अभी. Okay, it is going at 32 PE. Operating profit margin of 11%. Slightly high debt to equity ratio of 1.33, and 1 year return is 235% for Hindalco, and it is also trending right now. Okay. Now the next segment we're going to talk about is the copper segment. So let's look at that as well. Now copper is used in building construction, power generation, transmission, electronic product manufacturing, and production of industrial machinery and transportation of vehicles. Okay, transportation vehicles mein copper is used. Now the demand for copper is currently on a rise. It's going up. Copper prices have been increasing a lot, and the primary reason is the rise in demand. Some analysts believe that it is going to be the start of a big bull run in the copper prices. Okay. Now, why is this? Okay, we had I think once spoken about this in another video of mine. This is because countries across the world are trying to move away from fossil fuels, okay, away from all the oil and gas, and now are currently investing heavily in the electric infrastructure, okay, which is your EV segment. We spoke about this electric infrastructure needed to power the future. Now, Germany is adding solar capacity by bulk. Denmark is investing heavily in electric vehicle chargers. China is also doing a lot, and for all this, the primary raw material is copper. Okay, so guys, towards the future, if you look at it from a futuristic perspective, copper is important for the way the world is going into the future. Copper production in India is around 2% of the world production. Okay, Until 3 years back, India was a net exporter of copper, but recently it has turned into a net importer of copper, which is sad. Okay, India exports more than $2 billion in 17-18 before turning into a net importer, okay, in 2018-19. India turning a net importer has been both on the account of sharp increase in imports and contraction of exports. This is mainly due to shutting off a plant of Vedanta's subsidiary Sterlite Copper, which had a production capacity of 4 lakh tons. Okay, so one of the plants got shut down and we now had to start importing it. Again, an opportunity for new players in this market. Now let's look at the last 5-year global price of copper. Now if you look at it in 16, 17, 18, 19, it has all been the same, right? After the pandemic, okay, see how it is shot up. This is Indian rupee per metric ton. See how it has shot up now to almost 6 lakh per metric ton, which is insane, which is a massive shoot up, right? And this is going to be very important for the future outlook as well. Now let's look at some copper mining companies in India. The biggest, again, Vedanta, but that thing got closed. We have Hindalco doing copper, and we also have Hindustan Copper doing copper. Okay, so if you look at it from that perspective, Hindalco and Vedanta obviously from their stats look quite attractive, okay, because the operating profit margin of Hindustan Copper is -2%, their ROA is -43%, not that great, okay. Their last 1 year return though, Hindustan Copper has given almost 5 times in the last 1 year, right? It has given 481%, whereas Vedanta and Hindalco have given around 200%, okay. Now, this is why it's important. Please look at the copper industry as well and look at these companies in the copper sector as well, okay. Next, we will talk about another commodity which you might have heard of, which is called zinc. Okay, now zinc is necessary for modern living, and with respect to the tonnage produced, okay, stands fourth among all the metals in the world production. Okay, the ones that are before zinc or the highest ones are copper, aluminum and iron. Okay, about 3/4 of zinc is used in consumption of metal, mainly as a coating to protect the iron and steel from corrosion, okay, called galvanized metal. Okay, so it is used in steel a lot. And as alloying metal to make bronze and brass, it is also used as zinc based die in casting alloy and as rolled zinc. Remaining 1/4 is usually consumed as zinc compounds, mainly by rubber, chemical, paint and agricultural industries. Okay. Now, with the projected high growth of the steel industry, again we're coming back to steel again, and the demand for galvanization with zinc, okay, and the automobile industry where lead and zinc is again very important, we are projecting that this industry, the zinc industry, would have a very high growth. Okay, the only problem here is the per capita annual consumption in India for zinc is only 200 grams. That is very, very, very low. This is among the lowest in the developing world. Okay, India produces almost 700,000 tons of zinc per year, and the zinc demand is approximately 850,000 tons of zinc each year. Increase in demand for galvanized steel should lead to increased demand for zinc. Now look at the chart here, which is the price of zinc per metric ton in USD terms, right? See how it has gone up and down. It has gone up to $3,500, $3,500, and now back in coronavirus it fell down, and now it's come back to around 2.71k. Okay, and look at the zinc companies in India. We have Hindustan Zinc and Vedanta again. Hindustan Zinc has a market cap of around 1.3 lakh crore market cap, 19 P ratio, 18 ROE percentage, which is good. Operating margin percentage is 48%, which is very high. 1 year return of 86%. So this is, and low debt to equity ratio of 0.25%. So this is something that you can look at. Now, in the next segment, we will talk about another commodity called manganese. Okay, so let's look at that in the next segment. As much as 90% of manganese consumption, both in US and globally, is again accounted by the steel industry. Okay, manganese removes oxygen and sulfur when iron ore is converted into iron. It is also an essential alloy that helps convert iron into steel. So manganese is used in iron ore, which is invariably used in steel. So if manganese cost goes up, okay, then the iron ore cost will go up, then the steel cost will go up, and then understood, right? So how it works. And again, the demand is driven by whom? Demand is driven by steel, right? If the steel costs go up, then if the steel demand is high, then iron ore demand would be high, then obviously manganese demand would be high, then zinc demand also would be high because you want galvanized metal. See, now it becomes so simple for you to understand. Okay, Indian manganese alloy producers are mostly dependent on imports, again sad, for fulfilling their manganese ore requirements. Although the production of manganese ore has increased exponentially over the years, which has reduced the quantity of imports to some extent, but it is still inadequate to fulfill the demand of Indian steel players. The long-term demand for manganese is tied up with the demand of steel, and the demand for steel has been covered earlier. Okay. Now look at the chart. Okay, this is a 5-year chart, a 5-year global price chart of manganese in CNY per metric ton. CNY is basically the Chinese yuan, okay, the Chinese currency. Now, if you look at the chart, you will see how it is fluctuating insanely, but again, this will be very similar to how the demand of the steel prices are also being played. Okay. Now, in India, there's a company called MOIL, which is the major producer of manganese in India. Okay, their current market cap is only 3,700 crores. Okay, the PE is 36.38 PE. ROA is slightly lower at 8.31. Operating profit margin good enough at 14%. So this is what is there in the manganese segment. Now let's look at the last commodity in this segment called phosphorus in the next segment. Now, by far the largest use of phosphorus compounds is for the fertilizers and agrochemical segment in India. Okay, not India but generally. It is also an important component for guess whom? The steel production industry. Okay. Phosphate demand in India is expected to increase over the next 5 years due to a combination of factors. Okay, the combination of factors are the necessity of balancing fertilizer nutrient application rates. Okay, for in the agricultural sector, increased crop area is increasing in India, so obviously fertilizers will become more. Okay, higher application rate because a lot of people are using more fertilizers now, and also there's a change in crop mix which requires a lot of phosphorus induced fertilizers. Okay, so that is why it is important for us. Now, India again imports about 5 million tons of rock phosphate every year and 2.4 million tons of phosphoric acid. Okay, rock phosphate from which phosphorus is extracted. Okay, look at the global price of that in the last 5 years. If you see in the last 5 years from 2016, it's actually fallen down from $114 okay per metric ton to now about $88, right? It has actually fallen down. Now, there's one company in the stock market, in Indian stock market, that deals with rock phosphate, UPL. Okay, UPL is the only major rock phosphate producer in India, at least in the mid cap and large cap space. Okay, United Phosphorus, okay, which is called UPL, is also a producer of crop protection products, intermediates, specialty chemicals, and other industrial chemicals. UPL has around 48,000 crores, okay, 48,500 crore market cap. 18.6 PE ratio, slightly lower ROE at 13.8, good operating profit margin at 20%, higher debt to equity ratio at around 1.7, and 1 year return is currently at 99.03, which is 100%. Okay, so this was the last segment of the phosphorus, and I hope you enjoyed that. So guys, we have finally completed around 11 to 12 commodities in this entire video. Now, I hope you've got a beautiful understanding of how the commodity sector in India works, right? We see that most of it is either linked to the steel industry and all are byproducts of steel. We saw how cement is also very important with respect to the construction and how it is also important as a binding element in concrete. We saw how phosphorus takes its demand from the agricultural sector, and now you have a much better understanding of how the entire commodity sector works. So see how you're connecting the dots one by one. Now you're getting much better, and all this only comes with extensive knowledge of how the world works. Okay, so this video that we put together was knowledge packed. Okay, it was amazing details that were there inside this, and I want you guys to give a shout out for the team below as well. We've done a lot of effort to put this amazing content for you guys out there, and if you like it, please like, share, subscribe below, and please put your comments and thoughts below. If you want us to cover any other segment, again, put the comments below. Our team will go through it, and we will come back with some even better videos like this. Okay, hope you guys liked it, hope you guys enjoyed it. If you liked it, like, subscribe, share. Any stocks shown in this video, we do not recommend a buy or a sell on this stocks. Everything that is shown in this video is only for educational purposes and not for buying or selling purposes. Okay, purely for educational purposes. See you guys. This is Shashank Udupa signing off.
Investment in securities market are subject to market risks. Read all the related documents carefully before investing. Please read the risk disclosure documents carefully before investing in equity shares, derivatives, mutual fund, and or other instruments traded on the stock exchanges.